Story 1. A Pastor's Prayer. My grandmother told me the story that her pastor, a Pentecostal, told them in church one day. He told of a student pastor who he had gone to college with that claimed not to believe in the devil, demons, or any evil spirits. He believed that a truly holy God would not create such a thing, despite the professor's teachings. He would not agree that they existed. The young man eventually began praying to God to show him one of the demons, if, in fact, they did exist. He prayed every day, several times a day, in hope of seeing what he did not believe in. After several weeks of this, he began to lose faith in the Lord. So he began praying to the devil. He prayed 2 or 3 days straight, several times per day, and finally had just about given up hope. One evening, while sitting at home watching TV, he heard an unfamiliar sound that originated at the far end of his hallway. Still sitting in his chair, he looked down the hallway, as far as his angle would permit. At the point at which he could not see any further, appeared a burnt orange glow that seemed to get brighter as if it was coming down the hall. The pastor did not scare easily. He stood up fast, as the glow, and now an indescribably horrid sound, began to near his end of the hallway. Finally, a figure appeared near the living room at the end of the hall. The pastor described it to his colleagues as the most fear-instilling, grotesque creature he could muster. Now filled with the worst fear he had ever felt, he began to pray to God to intervene and deliver him from this evil beast. He began to shout, "I plead the blood of Jesus over this home." After several of these pleas, the figure dissipated and the sound muted. The pastor told this story to all of his colleagues, his professor, and every congregation he had thereafter. Story 2. Haunted Okinawa. When my husband was stationed at Kadena Air Force Base in Okinawa, you were required to live off base until housing on base became available. We were lucky enough to find a large 2-bedroom apartment on the 3rd floor, just outside of Gate 5. Only Americans lived in this complex. Apparently, Okinawans won't live in a place that's haunted or suspected to be, but I don't really know if that's why they didn't live there or not. Anyway, nothing weird happened for the first 2 months or so, and then, one night, I was washing up the dinner dishes, and, while washing the silverware, I accidentally put the steak knives in the drainer with the blades facing up. While I was rinsing some plates, I put them in the drainer and scraped my arm on the blades of the knives. So I turned them all over, blade side down, and went back to washing dishes. My husband came in and was talking to me for a few moments. When I got through rinsing some dishes, I was in the process of putting them in the rack when I discovered that all of the knives were once again turned with the blade side up. This shocked me, and I asked my husband if he had turned them over while talking to me. He said that he had not. The next thing that happened was around Christmas time. My husband was sitting at the desk, working on the computer, when all of a sudden he gasped, jerked his glasses off, and scooted his chair back, all at the same time. My son and I asked him what was the matter, and he said that something had poked him on the forehead, just above his left eyebrow. After calming down, he said that it must have just been a muscle spasm, and went back to the computer. 10 minutes or so later, my son, who was sitting in the front room, yelled, "Mom! Mom! There's smoke coming out of the bathroom. It's going up the hall." By the time I got there, it had disappeared. I asked him what it looked like, and he said it was just gray smoke or mist that floated up the hall towards the front door and then vanished. Things would turn up, missing, often, and we would tear the house apart looking for them, and then we'd find them laying out in plain sight. I was always seeing these dark shadows darting from the corner of my eye. At first I thought it was someone passing in front of our window, but as time went on, I noticed that there was never anyone outside at these moments. You could always feel cool breezes sweep across the floor. Sometimes it just happened to me. One afternoon, I was at the sink filling ice trays, and the cold breeze just blew on the right side of my face. It blew my hair on that side, and it felt like someone was touching me. There was no windows open, no fans going. The air conditioner wasn't on. It was a nice early spring day. Just about that time, our upstairs neighbors moved on base. Their apartment stayed empty for 3 weeks. During that time, you could hear footsteps. It would be heavy, like adults, or sometimes it sounded like a child running. You could hear furniture being dragged across the floor, tapping sounds and bangs. I thought someone must have moved in, and I went upstairs to greet the new family, only to find that the apartment was still completely empty. During the last of May, we were getting ready to move on base, and activity really increased. I was taking a nap, and my son came in and woke me up. He was a little scared and told me that he thought he saw a ghost. So I got up, and he showed me where he saw it. There's a small hall that leads to the bathroom. On one side is a small Japanese washer. On the other side is a sink with a large mirror. He said he was trying to pull out a loose tooth, and he had climbed up in the sink to see better. While he was wiggling his tooth, he happened to look up, and in the mirror he could see a grayish thing watching him. It was peeking from right beside the washer. He said it was kind of wrinkled and had black holes from where the eyes should be, a small slit for the mouth. He said it startled him, and when he turned to look at it, it vanished. He thought he just saw something, that it was just, overactive imagination, and blew it off, and went back to wiggling at his tooth. And then he glanced up in the mirror again, and there it was. This time it was on the left side of the washer, and again it vanished when he turned to look at it. That's when he came and got me. It wouldn't show itself to me. The next day my son and I were playing at the computer, and we heard this crashing sound coming from my bedroom. We got up to see what it was, and my lamp had been knocked off the table and into the floor. There was no way it could have just fallen on its own. The lamp weighed a good 20 pounds. We cleaned up the mess, and when my husband came home from work, I told him what had happened. Later that night, I got dressed for bed and decided to look for my coins. I have several, including 3 mercury head dimes. I got out my magnifying glass and was digging through my collection, looking for a certain mercury dime. It wasn't there. I tore at my bedroom looking for it. I went through my nightstand and my drawers. I even looked under my bed. I couldn't find it. I finally gave up and put my coins away and went to sleep. The next morning when I woke up, guess what was laying on my nightstand, right beside my head? Yep, the very same mercury dime I was looking for the night before. Now I know for a fact it couldn't have been there before I went to bed, because that lamp had fallen earlier in the day. There was nothing left on that nightstand when I went to sleep. Because when I cleaned up the lamp, cleaned off the nightstand. The last thing that happened, right before we moved onto base, we were cleaning out the furniture, as well as the apartment. My husband was in the bedroom, and I was in the hall with the washer, cleaning the sink. My husband had the only roll of paper towels that we had left in the apartment. I asked him if he had any more, and he said yes, that they were on the dresser. I went to get them, and I couldn't find them. We looked in the bedroom, the front room, the kitchen. He was getting very frustrated because he couldn't find them. After a while, we gave up and went to bed. In the morning, we got up. We got my son ready. He was eating a Pop-Tart wrapped in a paper towel. My husband asked him where he got the paper towel from. He said, well, they were laying by the phone. And sure enough, right there in plain sight was the roll of paper towels. There was always a bad smell in this apartment, like rotting eggs or sulfur. The smell would come and go. Thankfully, it wasn't there all the time. I don't know if the smell is connected to the hauntings or not, but who knows. Story 3. The Flame. It was the late 1980s. The woman who would have been my mother-in-law died after being very sick for a very long time. She was a very religious woman. Her favorite Bible verse was John 3:16. In fact, she had 316J as her license plate on her car. She died just a few weeks before the wedding of her youngest son, John. My boyfriend, later my husband, was an usher at that wedding. They had lit 2 candles in the ceremony, one for Virginia and one for a niece of the bride who had died a year before. All through the ceremony, I noticed that the candle for Virginia had a very long flame to it, and it went back down to normal size as soon as the ceremony was over. The minister also mentioned John 3:16 in the ceremony, which I thought was odd, because it has nothing to do with marriage. After the ceremony was over, they were doing photos. I called my boyfriend over, and I said, you'll probably think I'm very weird, but there's this old wives' tale about a candle's flame is long. A spirit is present. My boyfriend agreed that I am in fact weird, but he said that he noticed that the minister used John 3:16, so he went over and asked the minister about it. Had the minister ever met his mother? No, he had not. Was he aware that John 3:16 was her favorite verse? No, he did not know that. Does he normally use that at a wedding? The minister glanced down at his notes. He didn't have it written down anywhere. We were very sure that Virginia was there. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the collection of stories today. If you did like it, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and give me a thumbs up. I really do appreciate it.